welcome everyone. Okay, what I will do, I will start introduce Maniisha, because I know she will give a lot of information, so we need all the time. So I will just tell a little bit about Maniisha. Maniisha has worked as a herbalist and an acupuncturist for more than 36 years. And she was introduced to light medicine in 2011, since incorporating many varied light therapeutics, including the monochrome dome, near-infrared near-infrared therapy, sensora, brain entrainments, and frequency-based color puncture in a clinical practice to help people attain peaceful, balanced mind states. She works in Fremantle in Western Australia, and in 2016, she co-founded the Australasian Light Association. I'm very sure that you will enjoy this presentation, especially because Maniisha has a wealth of information to share. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and Maniisha will then answer these questions at the end of the presentation. So welcome, Maniisha, and I hand over the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Thelma. That's great. I'm just going to mention that I've had a few little blackouts with the internet, so but we've got good audio and we've got the slides working. So I'm going to launch off straight away. As Thelma said, I've got lots of information to share with you. So today what I'd like to share with you is, first of all, a little bit of a discussion about our biofield. And then, of course, that leads to discussing biophotons. And then I'll be launching into actually methods to measure our body light, and a GDV camera session in action, which I've pre-recorded. That's a little video which you'll be able to watch during the presentation. And I'll finish it off with the case examples using the GDV camera, which to me is probably the most exciting. It's the hands-on. So let's launch in straight away. So I dug up a definition of the biofield by Dr. Beverly Rubik. And Dr. Beverly has a PhD in biophysics, and she's well known for her work in researching the human biofield. So she says the human body emits low-level light, heat, acoustical energy, has electrical and magnetic properties, and may also transduce energy that cannot easily be defined by physics and chemistry. All of these emissions are part of the human energy field, also called the biologic field or the biofield. So what she's actually saying is that our body emits light, heat, sound, electricity, and magnetism. And part of those emissions are transduced, which means they transform or change into a different form of energy that science is still trying to perceive or be able to measure. And I take that to be, maybe she's talking about consciousness. So let's have a look at measuring the biofield. Medicine has already acknowledged quite a few ways to measure the biofield. And of course, we all know about EEGs, which measure the electricity of the brain waves. It's very commonly known. And the ECG, the electrocardiogram, which measures the electricity of the heart. Of course, it can tell us if there's something out of place. And then magnetism. There's something called the SQUID. The SQUID stands for Superconducting Quantum Interference Device. It's a very sensitive magnetometer used to measure extremely subtle magnetic fields. And I know of Dr. Gary Schwartz, who does a lot of research in energy fields. He's in Arizona, and he used a SQUID quite often for a lot of his experiments, just to assess the really subtle changes in magnetism in the body. And then, of course, there's heat. And this is a fantastic method of assessment, but unfortunately, it's not really being used to its maximum, what I think it should be used as much. It's also called thermal imaging or thermography. And so our body puts out infrared heat, and it's measured by a certain camera. And originally, this was used so that it was used a lot for the application of pre-identifying any problem areas in the breast that could lead to cancer. However, it's also used for lots of other conditions. And as you can see in this photograph, there's an area on the left breast, which is very white. And that's a sign that there's really high temperature. And basically what they look for is the lack of symmetry, when there's an unusual lack of coherence in the whole signature or the photograph of the thermal imaging. It's pointing to something that's wrong or an unhealthy situation. And in this certain situation, of course, if there's lots of heat, there's lots of tiny little capillaries, that a lot of blood flow. And of course, we know with cancer has lots of tiny little capillaries that are a problem and grow massively. I'm just going to take off my headphones because they're annoying me. I think I can still do a good job without them. Just excuse me for a second. Thank you. The next one is bioacoustics. It's sound that comes from our body. Now, not many people realize, but our body does emit sound. And this particular woman, her name's Shari Edwards, I came across her work. She's a director of research and development at the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology and Sound Health. When she was young, she had an extraordinary ability. She lived in the country and was with a lot of animals. And she found that she was actually able to perceive and hear very subtle sounds coming from animals and humans. And she realized that it was an unusual, unique ability and nobody else seemed to have that. So she kept her secret to herself. She never really used it until later in life, her daughter suffered a near fatal accident. And what happened, she could hear certain sound vibrations coming from her daughter's body. And she used those sound vibrations to reflect back towards, she sang these sounds to her daughter. And she maintains that it was the thing that actually kept her alive. But in any case, she's doing phenomenal work. She also trains people. And what she does now is she's translated it into a computerized system, and she teaches people the art of voice analysis. She measures the frequencies that are low or non-existent in a human voice, or the frequencies that are too much of them, and from that she reflects certain tones back to the human body. She has phenomenal success with all sorts of really difficult things to treat. I'm just going to mention here too that on my very last slide, I've made a list of resources and references, and I've got Shari's reference link there. And I've also made this whole slideshow into a PDF so that if anyone at the end of this talk wants to have a copy of that, just let me know and I'll send it off to you. So that's sound. And I couldn't help myself, but I threw in this because I came across a fantastic interview with Karen Elkins. I've put this also in the resource page. She interviewed Abraham Sorondo. He developed a technique, a unique technique that no one else had ever done, where he could show the crystallization of the electromagnetic fields that were being emitted from human hair. And he was actually showing that the human hair sends out signals and then it takes it back in. So it's like a transmitter and also a receiver in waves. And these little slides that I've got here, they're actually small screenshots from the video footage that he's put out. It's really fascinating to watch. And this is quite curious because the Hopi Indians, some time ago, they were enlisted by the military to be trackers for the military. And when they were employed, they, of course, joining the military, they had to have all their hair shorn off, cut off, very short. And what they discovered was that they lost their ability to be a tracker, to be able to have that ability to perceive these subtle signals from nature. And they worked out later on it was actually the hair. The hair was acting like a human antenna. And without that, they weren't able to do their job properly. So that's another spin on basically our beautiful human body, what it does, emitting, transmitting, receiving signals. And then, of course, there are biophotons. It's light. And that's the big thing that we'll be studying today. It's also known as ultra-weak photon emissions. This photograph here is one of the photographs that Van Wyck did with something called photomultipliers, and it shows basically distribution of different parts of the body emitting light. So biophotons were first discovered by Russian Alexander Gurwitch, which you probably all know about, way back in 1922. And then further to that, Albert Popp, took this to another level. That's a whole interesting story within itself, Albert's life. And then further to that, other researchers, for example, Mark Bishop, who's from Germany, is part of the research of the biophotons. So biophotons emit a fairly even distribution of the light wavelengths that goes all the way from 260 nanometers, way down in the violet range, up to 800 nanometers, which goes way beyond the red into the near infrared range. So light coming from biophotons is very coherent. It's a little bit like a laser, so it's very organized. And they've also discovered that these biophotons are really important to us because they can replicate in environments that are opaque. In other words, in living cell tissue, it has the ability to regenerate tissue. So that's really very important. And the biophotons, I don't know how they worked this out, but the biophotons, there's approximately 1 to 100 of these tiny, tiny little packets or particles of light per square or cubic centimetre. So it's really hard to see. And it equates to approximately the amount of light that you would see if you were looking at a candle from about 20 kilometres away. So I don't think many people will be able to see that. The other curious thing about biophotons is that the DNA and other protein spirals, which we have many of, seem to breathe in and breathe out this light. It's almost as if they eject light and then bring it back in. It's a little bit like a spiraling galaxy which blasts out energy from its core. And yeah, this is very curious because again and again we see in nature that there's a replica of the same patterns on a microcosm to a macrocosm. So according to Popp and Rattermeyer, electromagnetic waves are one and the same thing as light and photons. They don't separate the two. And light is thought to be responsible for communication within the body. And Popp also suggested that biophotons are both created and stored in the DNA. coming back to Dr. Gary Schwartz, he was a gentleman in Arizona who does lots of research in energy fields. He did an experiment with geranium leaves, and he was able to perceive or see that there were these tiny little packets of light that was moving from one leaf to another, and they weren't just going one direction, they were going both directions. And he watched them for about a 2-hour period, and he concluded from that there was almost like a type of communication that was going on between the leaves. And he went on to say that possibly all of nature, animals, plant kingdom, humans, and star systems all do their communication via these little bundles or packets of light. Just before I move into this, I was just going to mention also about the biophotons. In our own body, we have the bulk of our photons or light being emitted on our face and on our head, and also on the palms of our hands. And actually the fingertips or the fingernails are extremely high in photon emissions, as is our cheeks, which is really curious. And it's also thought that these biophotons go through certain cycles of emissions. So this is Van Wyck's work. He did lots of work with studying the natural emissions of our biophotons, and he found that at certain times of the day, the biophoton emissions are stronger. So first thing in the morning, our emissions were actually quite low, and then they would start to rise by about 1 o'clock. And then by 4 p.m., we had reached our maximum emissions. And what he found, which I find really curious, is if any of you know about our cortisol secretions. Cortisol's a hormone from the adrenal glands. Cortisol starts off in the beginning very high in the morning, and then gradually goes down, 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 and it's at its lowest around 4 p.m. and through the night. So what they found was that this light emission had an inverse relationship to the cortisol levels. In other words, when cortisol's high, the light emissions are low. And that's really curious too, because when a person's got really high cortisol, they're thought to be stressed. And in my measurements, and also in Van Wyck's, they also found that when a person's stressed, they're not emitting very much light. I'll show you examples of this a bit later on. So that's really curious. And the other thing about photons is that there's seasonal changes, and there's even thought that possibly our biophoton cycles relates to our circadian rhythm and cycles. So that's really curious. There needs to be more research done on that, but it's absolutely fascinating area. So getting to this slide here, I wanted to mention what your field, my field is. Basically what I wanted to say is that our field extends a fair distance from our body. I had a teacher who, a spiritual teacher who used to always get us to put our arm right out, and he would say the very tips of our fingers is the edge of our energy field. However, I think that certain people might have a much, much, much bigger field with much more subtle emanations. But if you think about that, and we're close to a person, or we're in the proximity or in a room with lots of people, we're intermingling. Our field is intermingling with another person's field. And that goes, I would like to include thoughts and emotions to be part of our field or our consciousness. So really, if you think about it, when we're in close proximity with people, we're really receiving and taking in a part of that person's energy, their thoughts, their feelings. We're highly influenced by them. And of course, electromagnetic fields, they're everywhere, particularly in the city. So that's the other thing that's influencing our energy field all the time, particularly if we're holding a phone or it's within our, within arm's reach of us. basically our energy field is being affected greatly by that. So I wanted to bring up this note, and it's all about what comes first. Now, most people think that our body emits all this energy, but what if it's our energy and information which is creating the matter? In other words, it's the other way around. Instead of our matter producing the energy, it's the energy producing the matter. And I think that it's the energy precedes matter. And I just wanted to give you just a couple of examples of how we can more or less validate that. And Robert Becker, he wrote the book, The Body Electric. I think he was a neurosurgeon, or in any case, he did a lot. He was famous for his experiments, unfortunately cutting up salamanders or just taking their limbs or their tails off. And what he would do, he would alter the electric field or the voltage at the site of the wound. And when he did that, he was able to determine what would grow back, whether it was a limb or whether it was a tail. So in this case, definitely the energy or the electricity preceded the matter. And I also wanted to just tell you about this book, a gentleman, Doug Voigt. You can find a lot of his information on YouTube. But he's written this great little book called Multidimensional Reality. And he's also very much backing the idea that information and energy precedes the physical world. He explains things in really simplistic terms. So it's a very small book, and I highly recommend that book for anyone who's interested in that field. And finally, the other example is a personal example that I wanted to bring up. The same teacher, I'll mention who it is. It's Ramtha. Ramtha was a channeled being from JZ Knight, and I no longer follow his teachings, but in the days I did, he used to talk a lot about a formula, and it's C plus E equals R. And he used to say, in the future, this formula will be highly significant in our society, in our world. And so it stands for consciousness and energy creates reality. And you could say, instead of consciousness, you could say information. And we used to do a really dynamic meditation. You can actually see where the mudra hand position in that photograph. And a whole room of people would be blindfolded. We would do imagery and very dynamic breathing techniques, and we would focus very strong on our outcome, our desired thing that we were wanting to achieve. Is a really fantastic process. But and we used to get all sorts of incredible results doing this. But I wanted to bring that up too, because that's and I'll be referring back to this a little bit later in our case examples. And also, just to validate this whole thing of energy coming before matter. It's a personal account of my own, and I'm sure you're all familiar with astral experiences. I think we all have them more so when we're young, but I had an astral experience about 10 years ago where I was laying down in my bed. I could feel my body starting to vibrate, and then I could feel myself moving out of my body, and my arm went straight through the wall that was beside me. It was an energetic light type of arm that was going through a non-physical wall. And then I was standing outside and I was looking and observing my environment. And what I could see was everything, all nature, everything was in a state of vibration. Everything was vibrating, and I could see quite clearly it was doing that. But as I observed it, it became faster and faster and faster, this vibration, until it appeared that it was physical and it wasn't vibrating. And I had this sudden insight that all of life is really energy vibrating at a very great speed that we can't actually perceive that it's vibrating anymore, but it gives us the illusion that it's actually a physical matter. So I've kept that in my mind and heart and soul because I really do think that our world is mostly made up of energy. And so there's a personal account. So why would we bother measuring our light? So there's a few reasons why. First of all, the emotions are more in the realm of energy, so we can get quite a bit of information about emotions. In fact, emotions can be translated to mean energy in motion. I'll get back to this later, you'll see when I give the examples. As I said, it's often the energy which is a precursor to the physicality. So if we know what's going on in our light field, our energy field, it's a warning of what may come if we don't change things. It can give us insight into problems that we don't even know about, unseen problems. It's excellent for experimentation, which you'll see. I'll in my case examples later. And of course, for feedback, if we're doing some sort of therapy and we want to know what's going on, is this beneficial? Is this activity beneficial for this particular person? It'll give us really good feedback. So when it comes to measuring our light, as far as I know, there are two major branches or categories or methods in which you can measure your light emissions. And I call it one of them is the natural emissions and the other one is the forced emissions. And natural, I brought up a little bit earlier on. It was where we have photomultipliers. It's very sophisticated equipment. Highly sensitive in very cool and very dark environments. We can pick up the ambient natural emissions of these biophotons. And it was the work that Roland Van Wyk did a lot of work with. And on the left there, on that slide, you can see there's some of the photographs of the natural emissions of our body. However, the other way, the forced way, because the natural way is not that easy for the lay person to do. So the forced way relies upon something called electro-photography. And basically what that means is that the body is given a very tiny little charge of electricity. And when the body receives a charge, it's like a call and response. The body replies or responds in an ejection of plasma. It's a gas, a plasma gas. And within that gas, it contains light in a certain pattern. And what they discovered was that light emission is virtually synonymous, or it's replicating our own natural light field. So this forced emission technique is what the GDV, I'll talk about that in a minute, uses, and also the kirlian photography. So the GDV uses the 10 fingertips, but the kirlian photography, for example, the Peter Mandel people, they use the whole hand and the whole feet. Of course, it's really hard to do the whole body, and I do question that some of the kirlian photography that's out there that claims to see the whole body, I don't really know if it's authentic, if it's really using this technique. So the GDV camera, as I said, it stands for Gas Discharge Visualisation. It's a camera that I've got. I bought mine on eBay about 10 years ago, and so it was already used then. And nowadays they actually sell them and call them the Biowell camera. And I'm really glad I bought mine when I did, because I was able to buy software, and it was the software's mine, and I'm completely autonomous. However, with the Biowell system, it's by the same people. You have to actually rent the software now, and you also have to be connected to the internet to be able to do readings. So I don't have any of that. I'm independent and sovereign in that sense. So it was developed, this particular technique was developed by a Russian scientist, Koroktov, and it's been used in Russia medically in hospitals and also for research. And it's been backed up by decades of research to be able to correlate and make sure that it really is reliable. And they did find a really high level of replication. Basically what they did, they studied a lot of people with different conditions and they correlated that to the different zones, you could say, on the fingertips. So it uses the 10 fingertips and it uses a system called Korean Sujok reflex acupuncture points. So all the information goes into a computer software and it gives back information. I'll be showing you an example in the video soon. So when we're looking at the light field of our body, there's certain things that we want to look out for that indicates whether it's healthy, a healthy biofield, or not so healthy. First thing is the amount of symmetry, or we can also call symmetry coherence. So it's a nice, orderly, even type of pattern versus chaos. And chaos is, you know what chaos is. And I just grabbed two examples from my readings over the years. And on the left-hand side, you can see that probably one of the highest levels of symmetry that I've found is 95%. There's a measurement that's given. And the lowest on the right-hand side that I could find, although I actually think that I might have had even more chaotic ones than that, but the reading there is 70%. So you can see the variation. So I consider that the amount of coherence for the body is what is most important. But the other factor that we need to look at is how much light is the body emitting. Is there too little or is there too much? And you don't want either. But in this case, it's more common to see too little. I'll explain that. So I just grabbed, again, two examples. The one on the left is a young boy. He was 11 years old. And this was probably a couple of days after he had quite bad gut problems. And you can see that there's gaps in his biofield. A lot of those gaps correlate with the digestive organs. There's the gallbladder. Can't remember what else there were, but the pancreas. And there was also, curiously, there was the adrenal glands. So you can see there's gaps in there. So that's really probably not enough light. The one on the right is even less light. And this was a mother of 4 children. She always, whenever she came in, she was very stressed and very tired. And both of those things tends to diminish the amount of light that you can see in a field. This one, I've just changed the filter. So this actually represents the true image of the light coming from the body. But this was a woman who had, she was post-cancer actually from having had it in the lungs. So I wanted to bring this up because sometimes there's too much light. And originally I used to always think, well, lots of light means health, because I always used to think light means health, but in fact, it's not that at all. I rarely see a person's body that's got all over too much light, but what I do see is flares, like solar flares coming from specific parts of the body. And when we have those flares, it's indicating that there's, it can indicate cancer or precancerous, but usually it's inflammatory, hyperactive, irritated, and sometimes pain. So it's something that's in its overactive state. So in this particular case, I just wanted to show you that this woman on the right side, she had a partial lung removal. She was already a couple of years past and she was doing really quite well. She was in remission. However, you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that also on around the breast side, in the shoulder areas, there's a messy, I call it messy, chaotic little section there. And that's what I'm talking about, this lack of coherence. So that's an area in her body that was unhealthy. And even though that flare was just above the actual lung area, it's very close. It was more in her throat area. And you can also see in her head area, she had some flares as well. And she did have a rather, I guess you would call a yang disposition, strong emotions. Okay, GDV in action. This is where I'm going to play you a little video. It's actually not that little. It goes for 14 minutes, but it's of me doing a session with somebody, and it explains it quite well. So if you bear with me, and I'll get that happening for you. So I'm just going to write in here before the sensorial therapy. So we'll do a photo, actually we'll do 2 photos before and 2 after to do a comparison. I just need to explain to you how this works. So if you can see in here, here's the glass plate. It's actually electrically conductive, so there'll be a very minute charge that goes through the glass plate, goes through your fingertips, and then your fingertips respond with like a flare of light, and that's what we capture on camera. So this is like a little dark room, and what we're going to do is I'm going to photograph each of your fingers starting on your right thumb. But before we do that, and then we'll work all our way through. So the idea is you get your fingertip actually on the glass plate. It doesn't have to be hard pressure, it's just very light pressure. Yeah, we'll just work our way through. So I'm going to start off with here. Put that on, and I'm also going to put this on, which is this keeps you grounded. It's the earth, because there is a slight little charge, so we'll put that on. Excellent. Now if you can take your thumb out and put your index finger in, the next one. Ready to roll? Yeah. And now we'll change it to the middle finger. That's great. And the ring finger. Awesome. Actually, that looks like that's not quite on properly. Let's just do that one again. You still got the ring finger on. Let's do that again. That's better. The thumb's in there and sitting on the glass plate. Okay, we cover it up so it's really like a little dark photography room. The thumb's in there. Sitting on the glass plate. Okay, cover it up so it's really like a little dark photography room. This is just a very fine filter that goes over the glass, and it gives a different reading. I'll explain a bit later on what that reading's about. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do another set of photographs. So we're just going to repeat that once again. Okay. Beautiful. And the next one? Yeah. Another set of photographs. So we're just going to repeat that once again. Okay. Beautiful. And the next one? Yeah. The bluish ring zone is the optimal zone, and the red or pink area within, if one of these readings go into that zone, it means that that part of your body is under-functioning, hypo-functioning, or tired or weak, just not up to par. If it goes into the yellow region, it means it's over-functioning, it's inflamed, irritated, or hyperactive. Bearing in mind this can change very quickly because it's energy filled rather than anything set in stone, and energy changes very quickly. You can see the red line and the blue line. The red line is without the filter, and the blue is with. And without the filter means that it represents more your pure energy and your emotional state, whereas with the filter it's more it's getting closer to the physical, the physiological part of your body. So I immediately went to this one because it goes in.
That's the lumbar zone, which is the lower back. I don't know, you may or may not have issues with that part of your body because it's on the energy field, and I know through the correlation of the emotional or either the TCM, the lower back can sometimes be financial, support stress. It's not always physical, but it can relate to the more emotional aspect of that part of your body, because it's curious because the blue line in the lumbar, like the physiological, physical part of your body is actually fine. So I don't know if there's any signs of soreness or anything in your lower back or not.
No, so
okay.
I have soreness in my upper back, but not my lower. The two might be linked.
Okay. This is
interesting.
This is more middle back here, so it's on the borderline there. That's interesting. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick scan. It's pretty good. Physically, these two come out fairly large, which is throat and jaw and teeth area. You're laughing for some reason, and it's the same also on this side with the throat. So you don't have to divulge anything. You don't have to tell me at all.
I think I hold a lot of stress in my jaw.
Quite possibly, absolutely. There's so many people who do, and it's, I think, one of the reasons why I see throat and jaw areas, and also because of dental things, I see so often that it's in that zone. It's in the hyperactive area in so many people. Tension in the jaw could easily do it. I won't go into this too much now, but let's just have a quick look at the energy field. So this is without the filter, and this is with the filter.
This is so amazing.
So you can look for the dips and you can look for the flares. So we've got a dip here which is gallbladder.
Okay.
And again, it may not be physical, or it could be preceding, like building up to a potential problem later. And it may not actually be a physical problem at the moment, actually, because if you look at gallbladder over here, where is it? There. It's not really depressed in the same way as it is here.
Yeah.
But gallbladder, again, if you look for an association emotionally, mentally, gall is about having depressed in the same way as it is. People with too much gallbladder, they can be bitter and really a lot of yang, a lot of fire. But if you don't have much gall, that could be the opposite, that you don't have enough of that sort of, because that's on more on an emotional energy level, because it's not showing up so much on the filtered one.
Okay.
And this one here, that's the urinogenital area. And in Russian, they don't actually talk about the reproductive system as such, but this is their terminology for the reproductive system. So there may be a little bit of, I don't know, it's always hard to interpret, but there's just a little bit of a dip there. Again, it's not showing up physically with the filter. This is a little bit rough, I would say. It's just got a bit uneven. That's the nose-ear area. And again, it's energetic, because over here it's not so much of a problem.
Yeah.
Just going to quickly look at the symmetry level, 93%, which is really good. And that says, I think that says 95%.
Does that mean, what does that mean?
Symmetry is like, you've heard of the word coherency, coherent. If you can imagine, if there's chaos or ripples and roughness on the ocean, it means your energy field is not optimally healthy in that area. There's some disturbance, you could say. Whereas if it's really nice and smooth and high coherence or symmetry, it means it's like balance between the two sides. It's nice and symmetrical and balanced. It's a good sign of good health. So 95, that is an amazing high level of coherency. 93 is really good too. So you're in good shape, basically. I'll just quickly show the side view.
Wow.
There's that lower back right down in the coccyx, pelvis.
So that's overactive.
Yeah, there's a bit of a flare. So it could be, I mean, it could even be a previous fall on your buttocks and low-grade inflammation there, something that's not fully healed.
I do have inflammation down here. I've got some pelvis.
Okay.
So that would make sense.
Yeah, that's probably what that is. So that's the one that stands out the most, except here. Okay, you're talking about your upper back.
Yeah.
Okay, this is neck, middle,
Yeah.
and lumbar. So that's looking a little bit rough, but more on the energetic field, because on this, and it's more one-sided as well, on this side, the right side, whereas this side, with the filter, more physical, it's not coming up that much. So that to me indicates that it's not set in stone, that you can make that changes pretty easily and well. Your body should be quite responsive, because it's mostly on the energetic level at this stage. It's not yet gone to the physical. So I'm just going to show you one more thing before I get you into the sensora.
This is amazing.
It's interesting,
This is
isn't it?
amazing. It's like seeing a physical validation for what I already feel energetically in my body.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? What it picks up
amazing.
again and again. I find that with people, it's incredible. This is a really good reading, a really, really good reading. So it's going to be hard to see changes with the light therapy, because it's always better to get people who are out of balance first. But you're actually really in balance. There's two things we look at. We look at the size of the energy of the balls, and that's represented in this graph here. So it should be within this blue zone, which they all are. They're strong, they're healthy, got plenty of energy. And then the other thing is the symmetry, or the line up, which you can see is phenomenal. And that's represented in that scale down there. And the one that's most out is 0.05, which is virtually nothing, which is the centre chakra. So that's an amazing reading. We'll just save all that, and then let's do your sensora, and we'll see how we go. So we're just going to do some more photos after the sensora now. Amazing. And you're all chilled out. Okay, we'll just do the same again. So thumb first. That's great. There's no filter there.
Awesome.
Okay. So load. It's always a surprise to me. I never know what I'm going to find. So that's great. Look at that. That lumbar zone, that's been corrected. This has come out a little bit. Yeah. I mean, it's on the edge. It's still okay. That's a good reading. Shall we just put on the filters and see physically? So blue was before with filters, and the brown is after. So the throat got better. I mean, they're pretty much similar. Rectum got better. And this one got better, the transverse colon. Maybe it's about tension or something. This one got better, duodenum, so it looks like your digestive system might have relaxed. That's good. That's pretty good. Let's have a quick look at the energy field. It's very good, actually. Okay, so the top two are before. That's without the filter, and that's with the filter. And this is after. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So this was before. You can see it's, I mean, they're both really good. This was before, which was some of these with the teeniest little bit out. And this is after, which is like super perfect. You can see the line up.
Wow.
Your starting point was already so good, but this is even better. It's like perfect, basically.
So, I'm just getting the slide back on. Okay, I hope you could hear that and I hope you could understand it. It was rather ad hoc, but it gives you an idea of what it's all about. So I'm just going to continue on now with some case examples. And for those of you who don't know what the sensor is, I think most of you will know, but it's an incredible system, sound and colour therapy system devised by Anadi Martel in Canada. And I've only recently got it happening in my space. And so I don't have a great number of people on it, but here's another boy, an 11-year-old boy who we put in there. And he only went in for 10 minutes. He actually fell asleep during that 10 minutes. But you can see once again, the red line was before and I think it's a green line is after. So there was some really depressed, well, I say depressed, the red line, there was a lot of lack of energy in certain areas, but it came out nicely afterwards. I'll show you another perspective. This was his chakra reading. So you can see on the left-hand side was before, and after you could see how that was improved. That was actually a really good improvement just with 10 minutes. So I wanted to show you a few with the monochrome dome. This is one of my favourite colour therapy systems devised by Carl Ryberg in Sweden. I consider him a genius and I've had so many good results using his system. So I dug up a few. Here's one, and on the left it's without filter. And remember, without filter is more the emotional, energetic. It's the more pure energy, whereas with filter is more the tending towards the physiological aspect of the body. So before we had, in this case already quite a good reading as well, but we had the same symmetry, 94 before and 94 after. But with the filter, we had a 93 symmetry, which rose to 95% afterwards. And this was another reading with the monochrome dome. Again, it's really quite difficult to get really significant view of changes if the person starts off already in a good state, which some of these people were. But you can see that the throat chakra was a little bit out and it came in nicely after the 10-minute session on the monochrome dome. And this one is also the monochrome dome, a different person. And we had, as I'll allude to a little bit later in another slide, I don't always see what I expect. It doesn't lie, basically, this system. So it's really good. But we had some more roughness and unusual changes in the energy field. You can see that in these photos before and after. However, the symmetry was still reading at 91% for both. So colour puncture, I just dug up one of these. I've got quite a few on record, quite a few photographs. This is probably the middle of the road type of reading. Generally, people do benefit. You can see on the left-hand side, there's a little bit of chaos and a little bit of dips. And then afterwards, it was more filled out. I wanted to mention, I didn't mention it before, that there's a really curious thing that Van Wyck discovered in one of his research experiments with the natural emissions. One of the things they did is they shone a light, a therapeutic light, on the skin of a person, and they observed what the photon emissions were doing during that time and then afterwards. And what they actually found was that the body went quiet with the photon emissions while it was being irradiated. And then if they took the photo straight after the irradiation on the skin, it was actually showed up more quiet and depleted. But then slowly, the light would come back and grow. And I've often wondered about that. And I come back to the thought that possibly our body does absorb and emit light in cycles. And my thought was that in some of the colour puncture or laser therapy, other therapies that actually are applied on the skin, our body may go quiet and the light goes internal as we take it, store it and generate it on the inside. Anyway, I wanted to bring that up. It's a rather curious thing. It needs more research. So this, I mentioned a little bit earlier on, there was a very dynamic meditation with my teacher, and that was called CNE, Consciousness and Energy Create Reality. We were in a situation in New South Wales where there were 3 of us, 3 students, and we decided to do an experiment. And I took the photo of one particular woman before doing this very strong dynamic meditation. And then I took the photograph afterwards. The meditation went probably for 30 to 40 minutes, maybe. It was quite long. And remember, there was a lot of breathing. Very dynamic. But I wanted to show you this. She had a huge improvement after this. But the other reason why I wanted to show you this is that some people can read quite a lot about the emotions through observing what the chakras are actually doing. I have a friend who's an expert in the GDV, in Matt Shields in Victoria, and he claims that he can actually see when people are being dishonest with him, whether they're trustworthy, whether they're reliable. And I wouldn't go so far to be able to say that I can do that, but I've learned a lot about people's being able to read people's emotions through these chakra readings. So I was just quickly going to show you a couple of things. For example, on the left-hand side, the left photograph, first thing that I do is I look for the really strong central chakras. And in this case, the first to third, sixth and seventh are all very strong. This particular woman, she had an incredible ability, a connection with spirit. She was able to do amazing remote viewing, telepathy, amazing dreams. She just had a very strong connection with spirit. And so that was one of her saving graces. She also had a very strong mind, very strong focus. And you can see that Ajna chakra, the one in the center of the forehead, was also very strong. However, she had a problem expressing her truth, communicating her truth. That 5th chakra in the throat was, as you can see, it's really small and it's way off to the left. Now, there is significance to do with which side the ball or the chakra is placed on. That left side expresses, or it shows, signifies that the person is, you could say, introvert in their expression of that part of their body. So they're submissive in that part. So this woman found it hard to express and talk, bring out her voice, to her truth. And the same with her heart chakra was way over the left. She had a lot of love energy, but she found it really difficult to express it. So afterwards, you can see how that changed. Actually, her heart chakra went right over to the other side. And that may have had also something to do with the strong breathing activity. But that was a really pleasing result. So let's just have a look at another one. This one here was a real surprise. I was just put it in here because we don't always see what we expect. Or I don't anyway. This was a gentleman, a friend of ours, who came to stay with us, and he had cancer of the throat. You can actually see on the left-hand side there's a little bit of roughness in that throat region. He had chemo and radiotherapy. He was about a year past and in remission. And this was taken fairly early in the morning after a good sleep and after a good breakfast. And then we decided to go for a walk. And it was a walk through beautiful nature. It wasn't overly fast or anything like that, but we walked for about an hour and 20 minutes. And when we got back, he said he was fairly tired. And I had planned already to photograph his after images. So I did that. And as you can see, there were huge gaps. That's a huge difference. And so it's not always the case that a big walk might be the best thing for us. And then he rested for about 40 minutes, and you can see the photograph on the far right. His energy had partially recovered, not completely to the same degree as it was in the beginning, but it definitely had improved. So from that, I would have read this particular gentleman would benefit more from rest and nutrition rather than lots of activity and getting out and about, which he tended to keep himself very busy. So that was an interesting reading. I just automatically thought, oh, a good long walk will charge him up and bring out more light, but it didn't. So that was an interesting one. So massage is the other thing that I like to do for people. And this was a woman, also very stressed, middle-aged. She had a dependency problem on addictive substances. And you can see on the left-hand side, there's huge gaps in her field. And as I said before, that often happens, A, with stressed people, but B, also with tired or generally run down or deficient people. She had both. And then after the massage on the right-hand side, we had a huge improvement. And that's generally been my experience, that people seem to benefit greatly from the touch. And there's several reasons or several things that might be going on there. For example, her and my field are intermingled for a good hour or so. The nourishment of being touched, there's a lot of reasons why massage might be so good. So you can see, though, in that right-hand side one, up near the head, it's still quite deficient. And she did have a lot of mental health issues, so that was interesting. Now, this gentleman came to me. He was in his late 40s. I knew him fairly well. He did have strong mental health issues as well. And once again, I look for the strong points. He had an incredible mind. So that chakra in his center of his forehead, where the thoughts originate, he was a mini genius in my mind. He was very strong and very balanced, and that was one of his saving graces. He also had a very strong spiritual connection, and you can see that in the 7th chakra as well. And he had a lot of goodwill, a lot of love. And just look at that heart on the left-hand side, that photo. That represents a really centered, strong reading. Even though it wasn't particularly big, it was one of his saving graces. But on the still on the left photograph, we're looking down at the 2nd and 3rd chakras. I wanted to bring them up. The second one, I translate that often to sexual issues. And he didn't have a partner. He was very needy. He really wanted a partner. So that's very small, and it's way off in the submissive zone, underactive. And then his 3rd chakra. Now, the 3rd one I often read it into it's power or control versus victimization. So if it goes off to the left, often the person feels like they're a victim or they've been victimized. If it's on the right-hand side, they're more the controller. They want to control. So in this gentleman, he definitely did have a lot of problems with feeling that life had it, or people had it in for him. He was a victim. And so in any case, after the massage, that's all I did, just the massage. You can see that there was a big improvement. A lot of the energy increased. And the other thing I wanted to mention about him, on the left-hand side, you can see that the 5th chakra of the throat. That's way off on the right-hand side. And I had mentioned before, if it goes to the right-hand side, it means that it's overactive. And this man had such a problem with talking too much. He had a good case of verbal diarrhea. It was very interesting what he'd say, but he could easily speak for an hour or more without letting anyone else speak. And so that was fascinating to see his little chakra in the 5th chakra way off on the right-hand side. So after the massage, as you can see, that came more to the center. The sexual one had come over to the other side. And not that any of my massages are that way inclined, but I think that a lot of people who are lonely in that sense, just the physical touch has really healing benefit on them. So I was really pleased with that reading. So this is the little piece of controversy that I've wanted to include into the talk. For a long time, I've often wondered what would one of these new vaccines, which is working on more the RNA, the genetic, well, I won't go into it. Anyway, I had a client and he told me he was going to have a jab soon, the vaccination. And I was really curious to see what might happen in the light field. So I asked him, would he mind if I did a reading before and after? And he was very willing, which was very nice. So the two photographs on the left was taken 2 days before he had the Pfizer jab. And you can see that they're quite good readings. There's a few gaps with the energy field, but generally it's quite a good reading. And then the two on the right, two photographs, were taken 2 days after the jab. So in other words, 4 days later. And I had all the conditions the same. In other words, same place, same time of day. And when I saw that reading, particularly that one without the filter, I really questioned whether I had actually done something wrong, because I don't think I've ever seen such unusual flares before. But in any case, I proceeded, and when I did the one with the filter, which is on the far right, which is the more physical aspect of the body, the same pattern showed up in the same region. And so what I would deduce from that, whatever's happening in the energy field is having an impact on the physical body, but not so much yet. I don't want to read too much into it, but I know there's a lot of people who, there have been a lot of live blood microscopy tests done before and after some of the vaccinations, just to see really how it's impacting the body. And I found them fascinating. So bear in mind, this is one gentleman, one person. He was in his early 70s. And really, to get a decent idea, I would need to do probably at least 30 people, but I'm probably not going to do that. Although he has very generously said, I can take some more photos after his second shot, which will be in, actually it's coming up quite soon, but there's 3 weeks apart. So I'll be really curious to see what that shows as well. So very briefly, there's a lot of limitations and a lot of learning that can be done in this field. And I would really encourage anyone who's interested to explore these. But as I said, energy fields change very quickly. That can be a limitation. Forced emissions are not natural emissions. However, so we're still getting to know these kirlian forced emissions. However, there's a lot of data to show that they basically do reflect our natural biofield. So there's still a bit more work to be done there. As I said before, the times of day, there's changes in our emissions. That would be so wonderful to explore that a little bit more. It's thought that the metabolism and the circadian rhythm might be linked to the amount of emissions during the day. So that's a whole area of exploration. And of course, I mentioned before that light on the body seems to do something strange to the emissions. It seems to be almost like there's a time period of absorption. And so that's another area that really needs to be explored a little bit more. And deep meditation states or altered mind states also can often show the light going really internal, so that there's less light actually being emitted. And you've got to be a little bit careful with that, because you can misinterpret that for an unhealthy state. So there's so much to go into this area, and I apologize for going so long, but there's so much I wanted to share with you. Here's the resource page, which, as I said, is available for all of you to take and to study more if you're interested. And I just wanted to finish off with a little quote, and that is, "We are all pulsating transmitters and receivers of light, love, and life. So thank you very much for listening, and I'd be really delighted to answer any questions that you might have. We probably won't go too long because we've gone so long already, but I'll exit this slide. And have we got Thelma on? Yes.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. You have so much information to share. And I think it was very well done because they're not, well, I haven't seen any questions come in, so you did a fantastic job. Can we see the resource slides again, please?
Okay.
That is one question.
Do you want me to?
Could you explain? Oh, yeah. There's Angela wants to know, could you explain a little bit more how the full body pictures come from taking photos of the fingertips? Yes.
Okay. So you probably are aware that microcosm and macrocosm situations in our body, for example, the auricular acupuncture, there's points for the whole body, there's the feet. Well, there's a system of the fingers as well, where you could say the whole body is represented just in those fingertips. And it comes from the Korean Sujok acupuncture system, where they really studied all parts of the body just in the fingers and the hands. So the Russians have used that system and they've translated that into, actually I didn't show that, but you can see finger by finger and the zones when you're doing a reading, the zones that represented in different parts of the body. So yeah, it's done in that method. And then, of course, it's been validated by decades of research in the Russians when they would find that there's an unusual sign in a certain part of the finger. They would correlate that with the existing problems, physical problems that that person had. So it was backed up by that research. I hope that answers that question. Anything else?
Yes, I have a question from Jennifer. How do the seasons impact the energy fields?
Okay, so I had read Van Wyck's works, and it seems to be that it's somehow related to sun cycles. And in autumn, I think that's when our body emissions, light emissions, become the highest. And we're entering, it's almost as if we've absorbed lots through summer and we're at our peak in autumn, and then we're going in for the winter. That's what I read, but I think there's still more work to be done in that field. But it seems to be very much correlated to external light stimulus influences how our body, how much it emits as emissions. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. I have two questions from Georgina. She would love to see the photo or the image from the gentleman after the second jab.
Okay. Do you want me to go back into slides after the photographs?
No, after the second, because he only had his first jab.
Oh, I
so
see.
If he's getting his second one,
okay.
Maybe that's an interesting.
Yes, if you could maybe get your email address to me, that would be good. I'm more than happy to share that with you. Yes. Okay,
and and I think there are no more questions I can see. So you've done a very good job.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I got carried away because it's an area of great interest, so I dived in deep.
Yeah, but that shows, and that is always wonderful, to tap into your enthusiasm and into your knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing it all with us. And I'm sure that people who have any questions, they will find you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who's come on the call, and thank you, Thelma. Lovely.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Oh, whatever. Oh, 1 second. Lynn is asking what area in the head was impacted after the first jab.
Oh, okay. Yes, I didn't actually say that. So it was the left cerebral brain and also the throat region. And I didn't actually mention that too, that I didn't know which side he had the injection, and he told me later on that it was the same side where those flares had appeared. But there's a cerebral zone, and it was the left cerebral zone that came up in the head.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
See you then.